Make sure we live. We'll be right back, y'all.
Cool cat, black shades, afro crown. Calm and collected, speaking that profound. Thank God, front line and one back down. Pause that poetic, H-rap brown. Cool cat, black shades, afro crown. Calm and collected, speaking that profound. Thank God, front line and one back down. Pause that poetic, H-rap brown. Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, known as SNCC, formulated in the 60s. The height of civil rights erupt in the city streets. No justice, just fighting for the liberty. Arrested for riots, but not before you heard the cry. Violence is American as cherry pie. Serving as minister of justice before the Panther Partnership end in abruptness. Organizing against racial attacks. Armed self-defense for a nation of blacks. With presidents he sat. Enforced potent gas. Organized registered voting acts. The young and passionate often will become activists, killed by guns of savages, far from pacifists, clashing with racist nationalists, government run by capitalists. Cool cat, black shades, afro crown, calm and collected, speaking that profound. Thank God, front line and one back down. Pause that poetic, H-rap brown. Cool cat, black shades, afro crown. Calm and collected, speaking that profound. Thank God, front line and one back down. Pause that poetic, H-rap brown. Wanted and taunted by the FBI. Brown shot by a deputy and left to die. No answer needed, no question why. Just to survive, decide it was best he hide. OT, lay low obviously. Regroup and retroop possibly. A year later, shootout with NYPD. Arrested, convicted, attempted robbery. Upstate in Attica for 5 years. Guess the time helped get his mind clear. Reset the revolutionary pioneer. Came home strong with refined ideas. Converted to Islam on his deen. H. Brown, not Imam Jamil Al-Amin. Moved to Atlanta, new on the scene. Opened the grocery store, got the community clean. Cool cat, black shades, afro crown. Calm and collected, speaking that profound. Thank God, front line and one back down. Pause that poetic, H-rap brown. Cool cat, black shades, afro crown. Calm and collected, speaking that profound. Thank God, front line and one back down. Pause that poetic, H-rap brown. A decade later, the year is 2K, serving a warrant for failure to appear to his case. Supposedly, deputies leaving his place. He was headed home, they meet him face to face. 2 cops shot, one was dead. From the hospital bed, mumbled and said, Jamil Al-Amin, the gunman alleged. Captured in Alabama on the run, he fled. Still in possession of the murder weapon. Body armor dressing for further protection. No alibi, whereabouts, words in question. Charged and convicted, no heard confessions. Sentence, life, no parole. 24 hours locked tight in a hole. 20 years later, hoping the fight is turning old. Light barrels keep fire burning in their soul. Cool cat, black shades, afro crown. Calm and collected, speaking that profound. Thank God, front line and one back down. Pause that poetic, H-rap brown. Cool cat, black shades, afro crown. Calm and collected, speaking that profound. Thank God, front line and one back down. Pause that poetic, H-rap brown.
All right, all right, all right. That was my brother from Outlaw RBG, Team RBG, Mike Chambers with H-Rap Brown. I am your host, Kofi Piesie. We have a special guest in the building today, joining us on Warrior Scholar Show. Um, could you please introduce yourself, brother, for those who may not know who you are?
My name is Akil Parker. I'm the founder and CEO of All This Math, and I'm really just a brother that teaches math to the people. And I see math as a tool of liberation for our people. So that's why I'm so adamant and so passionate about teaching it to our people, youth and adults. We offer a lot of resources to the community, such as the YouTube channel, and also my first book, How to Use All This Math, Volume 1. Look out for Volume 2, which should be released before the end of 2025, which is a resource guide for parents to show parents how to prepare their children for math class if they're attending public, charter, or private schools. And I've been a teacher for the past 20 years. Actually, this month, is my 20-year anniversary. I started out as a long-term substitute teacher in March of 2005. So I've been in the trenches, out teaching, all around Philadelphia, different levels and grades. I've taught online, online programs. I've taught in homeschool collectives as well. And I'm also an adjunct professor at Cheney University, founded in 1837. The officially the first historically black college, but Lincoln claims that they gave out college degrees, bachelor's degrees before Cheney, and that's fine. So it's like a friendly beef between Lincoln and Cheney graduates, but it's all love though. But yeah, I'm just out here just trying to teach math to the people because I see the importance, and also I see the effects of us not having the math proficiency and how that's really used against us, and how being math deficient has become so normalized for us. So I'm working to go against that, as much as I possibly can,
No doubt. All right. So before we get into the interview, y'all know I have to give y'all a simple definition of what a warrior, what a scholar is, and then from my perspective, what a warrior scholar is when combining both words. So a warrior scholar is a warrior, a soldier, a combative, one who wages war. A warrior is a person who engaged in experience in warfare broadly, a person engaged in some struggle or conflict. Scholar is a person who attends school or studied under a teacher, a pupil, a person who has done advanced studies in special fields, a learned person, a holder of a scholarship. A scholar, a person who studied a subject of great detail, especially in a university. My perspective of what a warrior scholar is, a warrior scholar is someone who is well studied. I'm blind. I ain't got my glasses on. Let me do this. Someone who is well studied and waging war against mistruths, pseudoisms, and willing to stand on the battlefield against institutions and platforms that promote that. A warrior scholar is someone who is on a mission for the truth, for accurate and sound information. A warrior scholar is one who is disciplined, good character, morals, and willing to fight back against those who use information dangerously. So that is what a warrior scholar is from my perspective. And our guest today in his own right is a warrior scholar. So welcome to the platform, Akil, man. I'm glad to have you, man. I don't then chopped it up with you. I think this is my third time chopping up with you. You was on the Degree Out podcast, another podcast that me, Shanathan Palador, and Dr. Ashley Wade have, and then you came back and I did another video where we just extracted the audio for the magazine, man, which you graced the front of the magazine. We're gonna talk about all of that in a second, man. But since this is the Warrior Scholar Show, man, and every person that comes on the Warrior Scholar, man, this is a question that I ask everybody that come on. This is a redundant question that I ask every time someone come on, and that is, what is some of Akil warrior scholars? Who are some of your warrior scholars, and who are some of those who helped warrior scholars who helped you along on your journey?
Man, it's a lot of them. But I definitely have a top three. I'll give you my top three, and then I'll give you some others that have also influenced me greatly. So I would say The top three would be Kwame Ture, formerly known as Stokely Carmichael, um, the late Dr. John Henrik Clark, and Amos Wilson. They gotta be those three brothers gotta be my top three. Whether it's like reading the books that they wrote, also watching the DVDs of the lectures they had from like the 1980s and early 1990s. Yeah, just because when I really got into like watching the DVDs and watching the lectures and also listening to the lectures in my car when I was driving, because one day I started thinking about how heavily influenced I was growing up by commercial hip hop, and I was thinking about how a lot of my ideology, as I was moving around, navigating the world as a teenager and then as a younger man, like in my 20s and whatnot, how a lot of that was just shaped by just a lot of influence from, like commercial hip hop. So I said, like, well, what would happen if I just listened to some other people talking about some different things, So I, started, riding in my car, listening to, Amos Wilson lectures and, Kwame Ture lectures that I had on CD, or, Dr. John Clark on CD, and, Malcolm X and people like that. That's another brother I'd add to the list, Warrior Scholars, Omawale, Malcolm X. But I think that had a great effect on me as well. That coupled with, reading their books and reading their literature, and really like analyzing it and, kind of, digesting it, you know what I mean? But also I can't leave out, Dr. Bobby Wright, Psychopathic Racial Personality and other essays. That brother was heavy, and one of the things that, kind of attracted me to him is like, when you hear him talk, like I hear like the old, like, lectures and, whatnot from like the 1970s and whatnot. He sounds just like a brother on the corner, like a brother on the corner talking shit, right? Like one of them old heads that just like, just like talking trash, right? But he's heavily studied though, so very relatable, but heavily studied, deep in the analysis, and had a genuine love for Black people, you could tell, and was trying to help us win, and letting us know, like, listen, we some of us we're collectively out of our minds. You know what I mean? So, and he was just, addressing the problem, and providing solutions. Speaking of being a warrior scholar, I would also put Jacob Carruthers on the list, speaking of his book, Intellectual Warfare, which kind of allowed me to think of what we're really up against, that this really is like, going to school and getting an education, like it's not sweet. It's not just, you're not just going just for the sake of getting a degree or getting a diploma or whatever. Like, no, this is warfare. That's why them white folks was burning schools down back in the day, right? Because they understand. They're very clear. Like, if these people get educated, that's a threat to us. Like the educated Black man, educated Black woman, right? That is a threat to their national security. So that's why, the war is on, like, making sure we can't build our own schools, make sure we can't, trying everything they could do to make sure we don't have our own curriculum, and all those types of things, man. This is intellectual warfare. And then, like, we think about like the 1980s and early 1990s with the Afrocentric schools movement, and why that was such a problem. And then these Europeans was out here writing these books and, trying to attack our scholars and whatnot, and even recruiting, Black people or, so-called Black people like, Skip Gates and people like that to write articles in the New York Times and try to discredit people like Dr. Clark and whatnot. This is not a small thing, us being educated. A lot of sisters too, like Marimba Ani, I would say, definitely, put her in there. People like Sharsheet McIntyre, who else? Frances Cress Welsing, even like, like Barbara Sizemore. She's got that famous lecture on that you can find on YouTube called Black People Just Don't Get It. So it's a lot of them. I'm very thankful for all of their work, and I think about them a lot, especially like more recently I've been thinking about them a lot, because I've been reflecting on how a lot of people over the years I've had conversations where I've heard people say things like some of those elders or ancestors like were not successful. And I was thinking about how like I'm in disagreement with that, because I think that a lot of the people that I've heard say that over the years because they might say that, you know, Malcolm wasn't successful, or, you know, these different people, Garvey wasn't successful. But, you know, I think that the time horizon that they're applying to that thought process is too narrow, because here it is, it's 2025, and Malcolm was assassinated in 1965, right? So, but I'm still studying Malcolm, and a lot of us are still studying Malcolm, and, you know, we will win. You know, we haven't won yet, but, you know, we will win. We may not be able to physically live to see the win, but the work that we're doing now will contribute to that winning at some point, you know, and I'm cool with that. You know, we may not be meant to, and I think that's why a lot of people also get burnt out from the work, because they want to see it in their own lifetime. They want to see it tomorrow. They want to, like, you know, put it in a microwave oven and, like, hit the button and, like, you know what I mean? Like, okay, then open the door when it beeps and it keep beeping, right? But it may not be supposed to be like that. We may not be meant to see it in our own physical lifetime. It might be for our grandkids to see, or our great grandchildren to see, you know, but if we don't do the work, then our great grandchildren definitely not going to see it. You know what I'm saying? So it's just going to prolong it, you know? So yeah. So if you think about, like, the fact that we're still studying their work and still trying to apply their lessons today, so many years later, I think that's a success. That's a success in and of itself. Like these people I've named, I never met in person. I never met Kwame Ture. I never met. Oh, I got to add H. Rap Brown, the man Jamil Alameen, because the song was attributed to him. His book, his autobiography, his first autobiography, Die Nigga Die. That book changed my life.
Yeah.
His political analysis was serious. That was serious work. I recommend that to anybody that is watching this that hasn't read it already. A lot of people watching this probably read it already, but. Or if you read it, you know, reread, it's due for a reread, you know what I mean? But yeah, like, and again, like, similar to, like, a Bobby Wright, just like the way he would talk, when you listen to him in the lectures, him and Kwame Ture, listening to them in the lectures back in the 60s when they was young brothers, you know what I'm saying? Like, in the, you know, in SNCC and whatnot, you know, down in Mississippi, going to war with the white folks, trying to organize black people and you know, whatnot. Just very relatable, just men of the people. You know, just of the people, but, you know, they had read a few more books maybe. So they're like, okay, we got common sense, but then we read these books too. So let's combine that and let's try to help the people move forward, you know. But definitely warriors, you know, but all of these people, you know, I'm still studying them, and we still studying them. So, like, you know, they were successful, I would say, you know, and, you know, especially when we never met these people, you know, but they left this work for us. So, you know, it's only right for us to, you know, pick up the baton and keep going. And I think all of their work can be found in everything I do. Like, even, you know, when I'm teaching math classes, and especially when we get into, like, you start talking about Histematics, especially.
We go
yeah.
Yeah, we go get in that. And you kind of gave me a broader understanding of that, because I want you to kind of break that down, because, like, a lot of those warrior scholars that you mentioned, like a Kwame Ture and Amos Wilson and John Henry Cobb, and Bobby E. Wright, all those guys, man, are, you know what I'm saying, are some of my top. I would say they are some of my top, you know, along with John G. Jackson and Dr. Ben, and, you know, a few other the great ones, man, Sheikh Anta Diop. A few other ones, you know, I put on the top. I got my top 10, and the individuals that you name, at least 4 of them you name are in my top 10 scholar list, you know, and some of those individuals' works that I read actually changed my life. You know what I'm saying? It actually changed my perspective, my worldview, you know what I'm saying? And it activated something in me that I had to get out here and I have to build on to their work. Like you said, you know, these guys that you talk about, we still studying them. They didn't fail in a sense. They laid the groundwork for us to come in, and they done said this on many occasions. You know what I'm saying? We have to, you know, you said the same thing, passing the baton. So they build the foundation, and we got to continue to build upon their legacy. You know what I'm saying? And keep working. And like you said, we may not see it. We may not see it in our lifetime, but there will be a time that we will win the world, win this war, you know, that we going through, these plights that we going through, you know, this suffering that we going through socially, politically, you know, economically and everything else, man. So, you know, most definitely some of them guys you talk about are on my top 10 list. You can't go wrong with any of those. So anybody listen to this or may listen to this later on in the archives, if you're not familiar with any of those brothers, please and sisters, because he mentioned some, some great sisters as well. I'm familiar with, you know, pause it, write them down, and go check out their lectures, because each one of those individuals have lectures. They have public speakings on YouTube, and they have some, some literature out there. So get it on every aspect. Um, but yeah, man, let's you develop a teaching method called Histematics that you just mentioned. Histematics. Could you elaborate on its principles and how you integrate history in with your mathematic education?
So simply put, Histematics is the use of Black history to teach mathematics, and at the same time using mathematics to teach Black history. And it really it's an outgrowth of just my genuine just appreciation for our history and studying our history, and the need and understanding the necessity of it for us to have self-knowledge and knowledge of our past, and who we are, and who we have been and where we've come from, right? So we can move in certain ways in the present and in the future. And also just while I was formally a math teacher in the classroom, trying to combine those two, because I realized that my students, they needed math lessons, but they also needed history lessons too. And I taught in spaces where they might have had an African American history class, right? But I knew who the African American history teachers was, and I knew that they wasn't solid. You know what I mean? And I knew it, even if they was well-meaning, they wasn't giving these my young Black students from different parts of Philly, like North Philly, South Philly, West Philly. They wasn't giving them what they really needed, in terms of the African American history. So a lot of times in my math classes, I would try to incorporate just organically different history facts and different history lessons, and talk about different people like Marcus Garvey, and kind of name drop, just name drop different people, different events, different places, and things of that nature. And then I just, around 2019, I decided to try to formalize that. It's something I kind of had been doing in the classroom, just organically, but I decided to formalize it, make it more official. So came up with the name for it, Histematics, and then I developed a 5-element framework for it, where element 1 deals with numerical, what I call numerical and verbal triggers, where, I may create a math problem that has a certain solution, which is a certain number that has a historical relevance. So I might create a math problem, an addition problem that has a sum of 1,804. So, or, 1,804 is significant because that's the year that the Haitian Revolution ends. So then we do the math problem, whether it's addition, subtraction, whatever, go over that skill. And then we start talking about the Haitian Revolution right there, right after that. Or it could have a solution of 1,791, which is the year the Haitian Revolution started. Or maybe, we got a problem with a solution of 381, where that's the product of a multiplication problem or the quotient of a division problem. But, 381 is the number of days that the Montgomery bus boycott lasted. So then it's a nice entry point or a segue into a conversation about something of historical significance for us. So that's that. And then verbal triggers is different words that you'll see in, maybe in a historical text, but that you'll also see them in a mathematical text, terms like inflection point, or, proportionate, a disproportionate relationship or something like that. These are all mathematical terms as well. So, it's an opportunity to talk about the math, right? While might be reading something of a historical nature, seen as historical, but then we could talk about math at the same time. So we can kind of decompartmentalize education, which I really think is a lot of people would say this is it's a Western, phenomena, this compartmentalized education, which really just causes a lot more confusion, and kind of gets in the way of true learning. Cause, you got to compartmentalize everything and put this in a box and then put that in another box. And I see value in that in some cases, but oftentimes in education, it just creates more confusion. So that's element 1. Element 2 deals with, African-centered applications and word problems, right? So we got the African-centered applications and word problems, where we just like, just create word problems, dealing with our history and our historical experience. It might be something about, an economics question, a simple economics question dealing with profit or whatever, like, talking about how the Black Panther Party, how they bought a bunch of copies of Mao Zedong's Red Book, and then they was on the campus of UC Berkeley, selling them, on campus selling them, and they bought them for a certain price, and then they were selling them for another price, so they could like, raise funds to, buy like supplies and, whatever they needed to provide their programs for the community, around Oakland and whatnot. So, but it's a way to like, practice some math, but also like let's learn about the Black Panther Party. Let's learn about what they was doing. Why Hoover said that they was a threat to national security. You know what I mean? Talk about Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale and, Assata Shakur and Mumia Abu-Jamal and all the people that were Black Panther Party members all across the country. You know what I mean? Different, and it's, there's a wealth of opportunity in terms of creating word problems, dealing with our history and being intentional about that. Also, like, in connection to that, we can take books, like, a lot of the books, like we could take like, like I mentioned, H. Rap Brown's autobiography, his first autobiography. And, I could go through that and look at the content in there and create math word problems, whether they be algebra problems, arithmetic problems, pre-calculus problems, right? Just based on what he was talking about in there. So it's a way to like teach the math and teach H. Rap Brown's political analysis and political insights at the same time, right? So that would be element 2. We could do that with a lot of books, autobiography of Malcolm X. As a matter of fact, the summer program that I taught in and ran last summer down in Baltimore in person, and we're doing it again this summer coming up. If anybody that's interested in Baltimore with children from between grades 6 through 12 in person in Baltimore this summer coming up. Last summer we used the autobiography of Malcolm X for that. So we were studying autobiography of Malcolm X and doing math word problems coming out of there. We studied Assata and did math word problems coming out of there. We looked at the narrative of Frederick Douglass and did word problems. We looked at Black Power by Kwame Ture and Charles V. Hamilton. Did some word problems. And last but not least, we looked at the Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson and did word problems. So it's just a way, just because I have an idea that there are books that I think every Black person should be exposed to, every Black child should be exposed to sooner than later, right? Early and often, right? And they need to learn math anyway, right? Especially also to develop their problem solving ability and their critical thinking skills. So let's get into the text and let's do the math at the same time. Element 3 is 5 elements. So element 3 real quick is what I call conceptual like double entendres, right? So where we have math concepts that mirror and reflect socio-political or socioeconomic concepts that we might see right in front of us, right? Listen, a good example is this. I was listening to this Amos Wilson lecture the other day. I was riding in my car, and he was talking about his concept of racial complementarity. He talks about how in order for like the Europeans to be dominant, other groups, namely people of African descent, have to be able to complement them, right? So if they're going to be dominant, then we have to be subordinate, right? There's a complementarity, aspect, and then everything so our lives are going to be kind of directed in a certain way where we'll be able to complement everything that they're doing, right? So in order for them to be in control on top, we got to be subordinate, we got to be inferior, right? As long as they're in control, right? But when you think about complementarity, that makes us think of geometry and complementary angles. Complementary angles are two angles that add up to 90 degrees, right? Or similar to like supplementary angles, two angles, or it could be more than two angles, but angles that add up to 180 degrees, which create a straight line, right? So just different concepts that are relevant to our existence that also can be reflected in terms of mathematics. Or when you think about a radical equation, like how to solve a radical equation, or the book Radical Equations by co-authored by the late Bob Moses, rest in peace to Bob Moses, but also co-authored by Charles Cobb, right? So with a radical equation, when you solve a radical equation, if any people familiar with how to solve radical equations, or any math teachers out there, they'll know that like it's basically 2 steps generally to solve a radical equation. Like you got to isolate the radical expression, or the expression under the square root symbol or the cube root symbol or whatever, right? and then you got to eliminate the radical symbol, right? And when I think about that, in terms of how to do that, I think about the United States government. I think about COINTELPRO, right? And I think about what a lot of our, more revolutionary ancestors, and some still living, had experienced, because they were radicals. So they had to be isolated from the community, and then they had to be eliminated either by, like the brother, Jamel Alameen, H. Rap Brown is incarcerated. That's where to, eliminate him, or they had to be assassinated, like a Malcolm X or like a Dr. King, who was becoming too radical, right? And on his trajectory, right? Just different people, just, people being assassinated, or even like, you think about like assassinations, like somebody like Thomas Sankara out in Burkina Faso, or, Samora Machel down in Mozambique, even though people say he died in a helicopter crash. I don't believe that though. You know what I'm saying? I don't believe that was, just Samora Machel. He was in Free Limo. They was fighting against the Portuguese too. Just like Amilcar Cabral was fighting against the Portuguese over in Guinea-Bissau. Yeah, right. So yeah. But somebody like a Maurice Bishop, Ronald Reagan sent the Marines and them in there in Grenada back in '83 when I was 3 years old. Sent them in there to take them out, because they wanted to create a society that was was more egalitarian, more humane. You know what I'm saying? So the United States like, nah, you can't have that. I mean, we can't have people living like humans. So we can't have that. So y'all got to go, right? So again, you isolate the radicals, and then you eliminate the radical. Right. So that's what element 3 gets into. Element 3 gets into just showing how, like, a lot of these concepts that these warrior scholars been talking about, been writing about, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of these concepts are math concepts. A lot of these concepts are also concepts that you find in algebra class, in algebra 1 class, in algebra 2 class, if you really pay attention, right, to the explanations and the processes and what I really pay attention to and really get into the books, right? And if a lot of us, if we can get over our fear of mathematics, then we'll be able to see it, right? We'll be able to see the connection, like the clear connection. You know what I mean? Element 4 is just statistics of the African experience. So it's so much statistics, in terms of what we've experienced. And I also like statistics is probably, as the more and more I think about it and the more and more I study it, and I want to continue to study it even more, I see that statistics is probably one of the most important subtopics within mathematics, because it affects so much. And like, there's so many ways to like use statistics to, manipulate us as a people, right? But it's also a way to defend ourselves against being manipulated, because there's so many things that, we can call into question using statistics to push back on a lot of the negative propaganda around Black people, a lot of the anti-Black pathology, like a lot of these things just defy empirical data and empirical evidence. But people say like Black people do this, or or quote unquote niggas do this, or niggas always do this. It's like, who are these niggas? Like, you know what I mean? Where's your statistical data? Like, okay, because what a lot of people will do is they'll have a personal experience. They're one person, right? Personal experience. And then they'll try to superimpose it among the whole population and apply it to the whole population. And that's mathematically dishonest. It's mathematically incorrect, right? That's just not appropriate. But so many people will listen to that, because don't let somebody have a large platform and then they try to do that. And next thing you know, everybody's believing it. People just taking it and run with it. They just take that ball and run with it, right? And this is why people need to learn math. And you can only do that to a person or a group of people if they don't learn math and if they're fearful of math, right? So if you understand statistics, then you stop and you listen and you say, okay, does that even make sense? You'll ask better questions instead of becoming emotionally triggered and trying to identify with it, right? Now, because it might be your personal experience, right? So I'm not going to take that away from nobody. It might be your personal experience, but it's just that. It's a personal experience. Don't try to like, trauma bond and like commiserate and like recruit people to like buy into this idea that like we all do that or everybody do that, right? But there are things in statistics that, we should understand. Confidence intervals, Z-scores, chi-square testing, t-tests, all this kind of stuff, right? That we should like really, really delve into so that we can like better understand the world around us. And last but not least, element 5 is Black math exemplars or African math exemplars. And I break them up into 2 categories, like the formally trained mathematicians, like, you know, a lot of our brothers and sisters that earned PhDs and in mathematics and taught mathematics, and, you know, on a college level, people like Evelyn Boyd Granville, or you know, who else? David Blackwell, or a lot of these people, and that were featured in this recent documentary called Journeys of Black Mathematicians. You know, a lot of these people, you know, that how could I forget Dr. Abdul Alim Shabazz, you know, that taught at Lincoln University, taught at Southern University. I think he graduated from Tuskegee, went to Tuskegee as a young man. At one point, he was known for having trained more Black math PhDs than anybody else, you know, in the country at one point. He also taught in the Muslim University, taught math in Chicago for many years in that institution. So, you know, that's one camp. But then the other camp are people that may not be seen as mathematicians, but were using math, right? Using math, like, you know, or did earn degrees in math, like such as Adam Clayton Powell Jr. He had a bachelor's degree in mathematics. Anna Julia Cooper, you know, had a master's degree in mathematics, right? You know, a lot of us, you know, we may not know that Sheikh Anta Diop. You mentioned Diop. You know, Sheikh Anta Diop was a physicist, among many things, also was a physicist and a mathematician.
That's right. That's right.
Right. So, and it was Diop. Diop was one of the people that caused me to take my position as a classroom math teacher more seriously, because I was studying. I was in the ASCAC. I was in the study group in ASCAC when we used to meet at the UNIA office, Division 121, down North Philly, not too far from where I live at. And we were studying intellectual warfare at one point. And it was a chapter that Carruthers had where he referenced Sheikh Anta Diop, some of his work. And Diop was talking about what we need to do, you know, as a people, you know, to get back to, you know, where we need to be, you know, as a people. You know, and it was like an all hands on deck type approach. It was like everybody need to get in this. We need our mathematicians, we need our scientists, we need any and everybody. You know what I mean? So, so you know, people like Joe, but also like people like Sundiata Acoli. Sundiata Acoli has a bachelor's degree in mathematics. He was a mathematician. He worked for NASA originally. You know, he graduated from Prairie View A&M University out in Houston, and ended up in the Black Liberation Army with Assata Shakur. He was in the car. He was in the car on the New Jersey Turnpike that day back in '73 when the New Jersey State Troopers tried to assassinate Assata and him and Zaid Malik Shakur. And they did unfortunately murder Zaid Malik Shakur. But, you know, I tend to think that a lot of it's the mathematics that'll let you know, like, that, you know, this course of action or this political ideology makes the most sense, you know, mathematically. So, but I definitely think too that a lot of our young people, in addition to being taught math, right, effectively and in appropriate ways, they also need to see examples. You know, they need to see examples, and they need to see examples of like people that's radical, you know, with radical politics, you know, because one of the things is, you know, it's something Kwame Ture said back in 1968. He said every Negro is a potential black man, right? And what he was saying is that he said that at the Free Huey rally out in Oakland in '68, when Huey was in jail because, you know, he was accused of trying to murder a police officer after the police had shot him. Oakland police had shot him. He was saying that a lot of our people essentially, like, you know, have education, you know, have formal education and have talent and faculties and skills, but politically they're not radical, right? They haven't been politically radicalized, right? So I find that a lot of our people still today, like a lot of our people do learn math, do learn science, do like earn degrees and whatnot. But politically, their politics are very much assimilationist, and they're not concerned with nation building. At least, well, they are nation building, but they're just not building a nation for black people. They're attempting to help build this nation, help to save this place, you know. So they're very much committed to and wedded to being American. Right. And I think that's really an issue of just not really studying their history and not really understanding what they're actually trying to save, you know. So I definitely think that, like, you know, if we're going to, you know, have young brothers and young sisters want to become engineers, want to become doctors, and, you know, computer scientists and whatnot, that they also should have examples of people that also did that, but were more radical, would use that for, to advance our people, in a more appropriate way. So those are the 5 elements. Those are the 5 elements. That's kind of like the long explanation of it, but those are the 5 elements. But like I said, like just using math to teach Black history and using Black history to teach math,
I think that's, man, I think that's brilliant, man. I truly think that is brilliant, man, because you have individuals like me that, consider themselves an intrinsic researcher, consider themselves a historian, right? And we can quote so many different things, what happened in the historical record, blase, blase, blase. But when it comes to math, we can't run it down like we run down historical events, right? Through the historical record. And I think the merging of the two, is bridging the gap between those who may not, are intimidated or really don't care too much about, math. I think that's a brilliant way to, to bridge the gap, you know what I'm saying? Between, and also great for children in a sense, because now they're getting history, or they're getting a proper history lesson, but they're getting a proper history lesson through math, because what you said earlier, I like, that's so brilliant to me, how you talked about an equation or a mathematical problem using, the Haitian Revolution, the starting date or the ending date. You solve that, and if you come up with that, then we go into the Haitian Revolution. That is brilliant, brother. That is brilliant.
And if I could say this too, it's like, it's something that, so the idea itself is not, it's not as unique as it may seem. I'm just being, I think what is unique though is me being as intentional as I'm being with trying to use it to benefit us as a people. Because if you look at like I do SAT prep, right? And I remember one day I was going over some sample problems with some students, and it was this question, and I do math SAT prep. I've never really done the verbal SAT, right, portion, right? I stick to the math. I stay in that lane. And there was a question that featured Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, and Ben Franklin. So as I'm reading the question, there was some like, some quantitative like reason and some quantitative information in it. So it was a math question, but when you saw their names in it, it's very apparent that what they're trying to do is really, it's like, okay, this is a math question, but we're going to take this opportunity, right? Whoever was the test creator, right, or the test editor, but they're going to take this opportunity to try to, uphold and promote this European culture, this criminal enterprise, right? This settler colonial state, and these so-called founding fathers that of this nation, right? So it's really like, yeah, you're gonna do some math, but we're gonna push that narrative that George Washington was a great man, and he wasn't, because he was a slaveholder, right? Thomas Jefferson was a great man, he wasn't. He was a slaveholder too, and a rapist. Ben Franklin, great man, no, slaveholder and a rapist too, right? So the thing is, it's like, all right, so this is something that already we kind of already is done, right? But it's not done as in a directed way for our benefit, right? People do it to harm us, right? Because if you teaching, you exposing Black children to, even in a math class or a science class, the greatness of the so-called greatness of these criminals.
Alexander the Greek. You want my son and my daughter to call him the Great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they doing that. So it's like, okay, all right. It makes sense for us to like just be honest about, but we can actually be honest about our history and include it, along with the mathematics,
Yeah, most definitely, man. I appreciate that, man. Great tool too. I mean, great tool. Your book, man, How to Use All This Math, serves as a guide for parents, community members. How does it equip them with the effective support to support their children in mathematical learning, man. This is the book, y'all, right
Yeah.
here. He's also an author. So this is the book right here, man. So yeah, can you talk to, how does it equip the parents to be more effective to support their children mathematical learning? You kind of talked about this a little bit in the magazine, a little bit, but can you kind of go into it? Because I from the little bit that you gave, man, I definitely taking that, man. You know what I'm saying, and trying to equip myself better with my daughter. I explained to you during the interview, my daughter was crying in front of myself and her mother
Mm-hmm.
because she was failing in math. My
Mm-hmm.
wife has never been that good in math, and I've been decent in math, but I just feel helpless at a point where I wasn't equipped enough to help her raise her grades with some of the math, because the math that they are doing today is damn near different than, when I was doing math, man. It's, even the regular 1 + 1 = 2. I mean, they doing, the those questions are different.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
fraction questions are, different. It's a whole write out formula. So what can we do, man? What your book does to equip some of the parents and, with supporting their children, man, in their mathematical learning.
So first thing I want to say, brother, is I want to thank you for purchasing the book. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? Definitely want to say thank you for that and show my gratitude. You know what I mean? Because we spend money, on the things that we value.
Mhm.
So you value the education, and you value my expertise, and you believe that I might know what I'm talking about, right? Right? You know what I'm saying?
I wouldn't have
But
bought the book if I didn't think so, brother. So,
right. But so I have some from being immersed in this work, right? Well, I've been a classroom teacher for the past 20 years, but I've been very much immersed in the work of trying to help us create independent educational alternatives for our people for the past probably like 7, 8 years or whatnot. You know what I mean? From studying the history of our people doing that, having independent educational spaces, and then seeing people around the country with the independent educational spaces, independent schools and whatnot, like brother Marcus Klein out in Chicago with Freedom Home Academy, just other places. Forgive me if I don't mention you, but you might just escape me right now. But the elder Baba Amin, who was down in Texas, but I think he's in South Carolina now
yeah.
or whatnot.
I thought he-
But just people like that, just doing independent education, around the country. So I have some pretty aggressive, I would say, positions on education and on mathematics. And one of the things that I've been saying recently is that, and I want parents to focus on this: if your children are seeing a math topic in school for the first time, meaning if they see it for the first time, I should say, if they see it for the first time in school, that's a problem. That's a problem. We want to avoid that. Meaning, when they see fractions, right? When they see fractions in school, they should be seeing it for the second or third time. Meaning they should already know how to add fractions, how to multiply fractions, how to divide fractions, subtract fractions, how to find common denominators, how to reduce fractions, how to cross cancel, how to convert an improper fraction to a mixed number. They should know what an improper fraction is and what makes it improper. Why we even call it that, right? That type of stuff needs to be taught in the home, right? A lot of people like to throw around the phrase "it starts in the home," but don't nobody ever want to show nobody how to do that, though, right? People always want to say it as a way to be overly critical of Black people, but then don't want to actually show Black people, okay, well, this is how you can start in the home. These are some steps you could take. This is you know what I mean? These are some tactics you can use, some strategies or whatnot. So the book is really kind of like a step-by-step guide with 20 examples of everyday activities that people are doing anyway, right? Or a lot of people do anyway, that can be leveraged into math lessons, arithmetic lessons, algebra lessons, geometry lessons. Because if your children do go to school, right? Which a lot of our children go to school, you know, because we got to work. You know what I'm saying? We may not be in a position to homeschool, right? When they get to school, school should be a space for practice. Like one of the things that I'll never forget. I hope I never forget that H. Rap Brown said when he was younger was any institution that you do not control can and will be used as a weapon against you. And this is what we have, the public school system. We don't control it. So it's very quite often used as a weapon against us. Now, that weapon becomes less potent and less able to harm us if it's only a space for practice. Because when we send our children into these spaces at the mercy of the administrator, at the mercy of the teacher, right? At the mercy of the adults in the building that may not care about them, may not have their best interest in mind, or may be well-meaning, but may be incompetent, so may still end up harming our children, right? Even if, no matter how much love they might have for our children, if you're incompetent, you're unintelligent, you're still going to end up harming my child, right? That's problematic. But if it's only a space for practice, then it's like, you know what I'm saying? The stakes are much lower, because really I'm learning the algebra at home with my parents, with my grandparents, my uncles, my aunties, the old heads in the community, right? That's where I'm really learning it. And I go to school for practice. I go to school to basically, like with sports, I go to school to get my reps in. That's what I go to school for. I don't go to school to really be educated necessarily. Like, I don't go to school for you to tell me, like, pour into me all this information about the concept of what a fraction is, and then how to add fractions, how to subtract fractions, how to find common denominators, all those things I named earlier. I don't go to school for that. I go to school to do, like, you know, give me 100 problems to do. Give me some word problems that I could practice on, right? That deal with fractions, right? Because my old heads, people that love me, you know, in my community, in a safe space, I've already been taught how to do this, right? Now, all that sounds great, but it requires resources, which is where the book comes in. Volume 1, this is only volume 1. Like I said, volume 2 will be out this year, right? It's showing exactly like how to do this, right? Because I'll show a skill, right? Like dealing with negative age, right? Negative ages, right? It's something I did. A lot of these things I did with my own children, and I still do with my own children, right? So it's battle tested, right? So negative age is like, I might be telling my daughter a story. Like the first time I ever implemented this, I was telling my daughter Asada, I was telling her a story, and about something that happened when I was like 5 years old. And then I asked her, I said, Asada, how old were you when that happened? And then she, rightfully so, she looked at me like I was crazy. She looked at me like I was tweaking, right? She said, Dad, I wasn't even born yet. I didn't have no age, right? But what I was doing, I was trying to introduce her to the concept of negative numbers, right? So think about how many times we tell stories to our children about the past. Think about how many times we talk about what I was doing what you were doing when you were their age, right? Or, you know, your grandmother never let me used to do this, or your grandfather never let me used to do this, or whatever. When I was your age, we should do this and that. Think about all these things that we talk about that happened before they were born. It's an opportunity for them to practice doing some arithmetic and thinking about negative numbers. And that takes us to another concept. The concept of negative numbers often is not even introduced until you get to an Algebra 1 class. But by that time, oftentimes it's too late, right? You might be in 9th grade by the time you even start talking about negative numbers. But yet you've been spending money, you know, for a while now, but you ain't even understand the concept of a negative number. How is that? Why does that make sense, right? So, and I have a thought that, or belief that some people have issues with financial responsibility and financial literacy because they never understood the concept of negative numbers, right? So that's why, like, they may overdraw their checking account. They have a negative balance. They may not really understand that. To them, they think a negative balance is the same thing as a zero balance, meaning they can't take no money out, right? So, but then the problem becomes when you have a negative balance. Let's say you have a negative balance of negative $100, and then you get a check for $600, and then you're expecting to have $600, but you don't got $600. You got 500, because that negative 100 got to be addressed first. You're not doing zero. You're not starting from zero. You start from negative 100, right? I think there are a lot of people out here that don't understand that, right? Because they never learned the concept of negative numbers. And one of the things I've been advocating too in terms of that is when we teach our young children how to count, when we're first teaching them how to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all that, we should just, and the schools aren't doing this, but we could do this in the home. We should just introduce the negative numbers at the same time, because all it is a mirror reflection of the positive numbers. So that you got that positive one, then you got a negative one. You got a positive 2, you got a negative 2. All the numbers got to match. They got to pair. They got to, you know, they match up, right? So you got your positives, you got your negatives, right? And then you can start with the addition and the subtraction. And, you know, and again, they don't need the way. And as I also tell people, the school curriculum is just a suggestion. It's not the gospel. It's just a suggestion. And we're the parents, we're the primary educators anyway. So we decide what we want our children to know, right? So again, this is where the book comes in. Because, like, you know, it's nice to be able to tell people that it starts in the home. It's nice to be able to tell. It sounds cute, and it sounds like, you know, proactive or whatever when you say that. But a lot of, you know, you hear people like type that on social media all the time, but they're not providing resources, right? They really just talking shit, a lot of them, right? They're not providing no resources. They really don't want nothing to start at home. You know what I mean? So I'm really trying to provide resources, right? Because I like to talk shit a little bit too, but I like to back it up. So I'm gonna provide some resources. I'm gonna say, look, this is what we need to do. All right. And this is how we're gonna do it. Right. And I'm gonna give you the game. I'm gonna give you the resource so that you can do it. And in addition to the book, this is why I got the YouTube channel also. Because the YouTube channel is where you really see the Histematics in action. Because you go to the YouTube channel, you know, your child might need a video on you know, in pre-calculus or algebra 2 on graphing piecewise functions or something like that, right? But, you know, I might have a, you know, Malcolm X hoodie on at the beginning of the video. So we're going to talk a little bit about Brother Malcolm, the first 2 minutes, and then we're going to start graphing piecewise functions, right? You know, I might have some HBCU paraphernalia from one of the many HBCUs. We're going to talk about the HBCU, talk about some of the people that graduated from there or taught there or whatever. And then we're going to start talking about solving systems of equations and whatnot. So you're going to get all that at the same time. You know, and it's over, you know, currently right now, I got over 860 videos. We got 7,000 subscribers. So, you know, we're growing, you know, which is a beautiful thing. And I'm really just trying to make everybody aware of it, you know, aware that it's out there. So, because it's all about resources. And I want for us to be the primary educators, you know, of our children, you know, because I want us to be more equipped. So that way, you know, regardless of what, you know, this like Republican leadership, federal leadership decides to do, like, you know, we're going to be straight regardless. And we can have the confidence to believe we're going to be good regardless. Like if they, you know, dismantle this department or that department, or they close this school, close that school, or do whatever. It's like, as long as we know how to teach our kids what they need to learn, all those things become less stressful, right? But it's going to require some of us to be able to provide those resources so that our community can be able to, you know, fend for themselves, you know, so to speak, you know. So that's where the book really comes in. Because like I said, I don't want our children to see certain skills for the first time in a school building. I don't want them to see percentages for the first time in the school building, or learn about percentages for the first time in the school building. I don't want you to learn about negative numbers for the first time in the school building. I don't want you to learn how to solve a quadratic equation for the first time in the school building. I want you to learn that for the first time in a safe space in your house where you're chilling and relaxing. And then you go to school, and then the teacher introduces it. It's like, okay, cool. Let's do this now. You know, and what I'm also doing simultaneously is showing how everybody's child can have the experience of the child of a math teacher. You know what I mean? Like, because I'm a math teacher. Like I said, I'm 20 years in the game. I got 3 children. I got a 19-year-old, I got a 13-year-old, and I got a 5-year-old, right? So as a math teacher, and a lot of math teachers do this, right? They probably agree with me. Their children are always ahead of the game, always ahead of the curve. So it's like a lot of times our children go to school and sit in class, and they seeing it for the second time or the third time. They've already been introduced to it, right? So it's a normal thing for us. What I'm saying is, I want that to be the norm for our whole community, right? The whole community. So like when I was teaching my son Nassim, who's 19 now, was a college sophomore, when I was teaching him how to solve equations when he was 6 years old, but he was in the first grade at the time at a public school here in Philly, and that wasn't on the curriculum though, right? And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm like, whatever, that's cool. I'm not going. And you know, and so I made a decision at that point. I'm like, I could use my energy to fight against these people to change the curriculum, or I could just use my energy to teach them on my own. You know what I mean? So I'm like, nah, I got limited energy. So let me use my energy to just teach him on my own, right? So he's already going to be ahead regardless. He can still do the work that they're assigning, but you know, he's going to be ahead of the game. And like I said, a lot of math teachers do that. So what I'm saying is everybody in the Black community, everybody in our community can have that privilege, so to speak. You know what I mean? And this is really what the book is about. The book is about showing these skills, and then like every time you're in that situation, because I'm basing it on real life everyday situations, right? That we might find ourselves in, riding in the car, in the grocery store, you know, in the kitchen, in the house, right? Doing unit conversions, you know, all these different types of things, converting from Celsius to Fahrenheit, then converting from Fahrenheit temperature to Celsius temperature. You know what I mean? Like, and every time you see it, you know, you do that, you know, over again. You know what I mean? Just different things like that. And then think about the impact due to the repetition, right? Even if you only did like you know, one of those examples or one of those practices or once a day, that's 365 times a year, right? So think about how much more proficient, and that's also the thing that's going to increase the confidence that your children are going to have, because children have to get right answers. A lot of children lack confidence in mathematics because they haven't gotten enough right answers. They've gotten more wrong answers than right answers, right? So their winning percentage is all off, right? They're below 500. They losing. They got a losing record, right? Like a bad sports team. They got a losing record, right? You know what I mean? They like my like my New York Giants, man. They cooked. You know what I'm saying? Like they got a losing record, you know? So, but our kids gotta have a winning record. So you gotta get a lot of right answers. You can get those right answers in the home and then doing those practices, like, you know, in a relaxed environment. And then when they go to school, they'll want to participate. They'll be more eager to learn. They'll even be more eager to raise their hand and ask questions when they don't understand. Because some children are like, I already feel dumb, even if they don't articulate this. Some of them feel like this. I already feel dumb because I don't understand. So why would I raise my hand and expose actively that I don't understand? I'd rather just hide it because I already know it to be the reality that I feel this way. Mm-hmm. But if they get those right answers in the house, right? Then when they go to school, they're like, it's cool if I don't understand because I already know I know a lot of math. So I feel confident, I feel comfortable exposing that I don't know this thing, or I'm a little confused about this right here, right? And compared to the child that always feels confused, I'm like, if I always feel confused, I don't want nobody to know.
Right.
You know?
That's a fact. That's a fact. You know, and a good tool, good resource, you know, as well. Like you said, you gave, you know, examples, and I see you use the word quite a few times, battle tested. So, you know, those examples you actually used in real time with your own children, you know what I'm saying, before you put it in the book. So, you know, and that's what a scientist does as well. So
yeah. I gotta see if this works. see if this works. Like because I didn't try some stuff that didn't work. And that stuff ain't in the book. that ain't make the cut.
I bet it did, man. All right, man. You recently was featured on the Acele magazine with the entitled "The Mathematics of Life." What's your reaction to being approached for the feature, and how did you feel once it was published?
Man, I felt humbled. I felt humbled then. I still feel humbled now, man. I was honored to be able to be a contributing writer initially to the issue, and then when you hit me up and said, you know, well, how about what if we make you put you on the cover and make you the feature for it? I was like, okay, I never had that, you know, experience before. I'm like, all right, and then you showed me a sample of a previous magazine, and I'm like, oh, this looks. I mean, I didn't expect that it wasn't going to look official, but when I seen it, I was like, oh, this look official. You know what I mean? Like, but I was like, so then I was really looking forward to it. And then, you know, I read the article and I was like, yeah, this is important information, you know, to be shared with the community and shared with the people. Cause that's another thing that I'm all about, man. Just, you know, propaganda, you know, it's like studying Du Bois, right? One of the things that I learned from studying Du Bois is like for a large part of his life, he was an educator. Well, he's an educator till the day he died, but for a large part of his life, he was strictly an educator. Then he realized that propaganda was key, right? Spreading messages, you know, having the vehicles to like tell the stories and like communicate to the people and whatnot, which is why he got down with the NAACP and the crisis. He was being strategic, You know, a lot of people try to say, well, you know, he was down with the white people. He was like, nah, he had a mission. He was on a mission. He like, look, if I can get the crisis, like give me the crisis and let me do my thing. You know what I mean? Because he understood the power of propaganda, right? And we need more positive propaganda around math. Like, you know, every time you turn around, for one thing, on a lot of platforms that, you know, Black people have, we're not having conversations about math. Like definitely not positive conversations. Math might come up. It might come up, but when it does come up, it's only brought up to try to cheapen it or try to lessen the value of it or try to, talk, you know, speak of like how unimportant it is or like how it's unnecessary. You know what I mean? But that's, you know, that's, again, that takes me to a whenever people speak about math being unnecessary and irrelevant, it takes me back to this Kwame Ture quote where he talks about how one of his many great quotes. He got so many quotables, but when he says that, you know, American capitalism will not only make you ignorant, it'll make you arrogant in your ignorance. You know, so it's like people, you know, they don't understand math. They, you know, they may not have had good teachers, may not have had, you know, a conducive learning environment coming up. But I think one of the ways that they cope with that, one of their coping mechanisms is they convince themselves that the math was irrelevant. They convinced themselves that they were never going to need it, right? But then what happens is it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if you tell yourself you're never going to need it, then you end up placing yourself in situations where you will never end up needing it, right? So it's like, oh, well, because then you find yourself in situations where it's like, oh, well, if I need math to do this thing, then I'm not going to go do that thing. So then it's like, oh, yeah, you're right. See? And then you end up feeling like, oh, see, I was right. Nah, you wasn't right. You got the game was rigged, right? You just didn't go into the space where you needed the math, right? And in fact, probably even in that space, you probably could have benefited from math, or you being able to utilize math, right? But you kept yourself out of it. So I just think it's real important for us to, like, you know, start like highlighting, you know, mathematics, and like, you know, and those people in our community, you know, that kind of that excel in math, have excelled in math, all those engineers and those doctors and, you know, registered nurses, and, you know, we start talking about it like that, you know what I mean? And the computer scientists and the architects and everything. Because I think some of us, we kind of because the popular narrative is that math is hard and like everybody can't do it, right? So those people with those experiences kind of dominate the conversation. We, you know, those that had different experiences and were able to excel, you know, we tend to kind of you know, dim our light and kind of like, you know, keep it quiet, you know what I mean? But yeah, just I'm just happy to, like, you know, to be able to talk about math in a positive light whenever possible, because I think it makes a difference, you know, definitely makes a difference. And also, like, being a Black man, mathematician, math teacher, math professor is also important too, because I think that what also can happen is a lot of people may, even if they don't realize it, they may identify mathematics as the exclusive domain of Europeans. And once you do that, when you do excel in mathematics, then you see mathematics as like a passport to whiteness, right? Or to honorary whiteness, so to speak, right? So, that goes back to what Kwame Ture was talking about. Every Black man is a potential Negro. You got a lot of people that excel in the STEM disciplines, but really for them, they didn't read Bobby Wright. They didn't read Bobby Wright. So they think their skin is their skin. They think the problem is the fact that they're Black. They think they're being treated this way, or in negative ways because of their Blackness. They don't blame the sociopathic nature of the Europeans that are being racist toward them. They think they're the problem, and not it's not the person that is treating them in that way. That's the actual problem. So they want to escape Blackness, right? Because they see the Blackness as the problem, and not the problem being the person that's treating them that way because they're Black. That's their problem, right? They're not able to do the deep mathematical analysis to realize that that's the actual problem, right? So, you know, it can be. So I think it's also important, because a lot of people, we end up, you may find that, you know, as a young Black boy, young Black girl, you may have some talent. You developed some talent in mathematics, and like your best teachers might have been white people or Asian people or whatever. So then you start to think like, okay, well, if I'm gonna go excel in this, then, you know, this is going to enable me to kind of escape Blackness, So it's like, yeah, I'm black, but you know what I'm saying? Black, I still don't believe that I still don't really believe that black people really do this. Black people don't really do math. I'm just like a unicorn or something. I'm special. I'm different. You know what I'm saying? I ain't like the rest of them. You know what I mean? Like, and so that also is problematic. You know what I'm saying? That also can be problematic. But then, you know what I'm saying? Because then again, you end up being, it's very easy for you to be weaponized against your community. You're on mute.
Yeah, my bad. I had muted my that's why it's definitely, man, important for us to Sankofa, man. You know, we have to go back and retrieve um the things from the past. And if we did that in a sense, if we taught our children that, you know what I'm saying, they wouldn't rationalize or think like that, you know, that they are a unicorn. You know what I'm saying?
Right, right.
So they wouldn't look at it like that. You know, I tell my children, people around me, when I look at when I think of scientists and mathematicians, I don't think of white men and women in white jackets or just Eurocentric men and women. I think of my ancestors, you know what I'm saying, in the interior of West Africa, East Africa, South Africa, North Africa. This is where a lot of the great North Africa, where a lot of the great minds come out of. You know, my son, Imhotep, ever since he was 5 years old, he knew about the genius of Imhotep, master engineer, master mathematician, master medicine man, you know, master builder, visa to King Zolja, you know what I'm saying, or Nasut Zolja, you know what I'm saying? So taught him them things, so when he's do hear some certain things, he can see his ancestors in some of the whitewash westernized education that he's been given, right? So he won't fall for the okie doke with some of those things or the perceptions that we have, or thinking that, you know, this is only a tool that comes from someone else and didn't come from, you know, us, or we didn't use this tool, these tools along the way, you know. So it's important, man. That's why, you know, I'm saying what you're doing is brilliant when it comes to Histematics, right? Because you're bridging the gap between the two. You know what I'm saying? Not only they learning about math, but they learning about historical events. They learning about historical figures from the past. You know, so you know that is man. Like I said, man, that is brilliant, bro. That is definitely brilliant. And even just me having the conversations with you, and even with the interview I did, you know, I had a few people hit me up. I told them to go back and read it, because I went back and I took out, you know, a lot of, you know, you right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You use a lot of, you know, two different. I can't think of the other one you was like. So I went back and I took it out. But a lot of people read those things, you know, they talked to me about, you know, that piece, you know, and how you made them look at math differently. Because like I said, just that conversation, that interview, it made me look at math differently. It made me go and purchase the book, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
you know, it made me look at that I'm using math is all around me, and I'm using math every day, whether I think I'm using math or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and by that, you know what I'm saying, you use, like, even in the book and even in the article, I mean, in the interview, y'all go read the article as well if you hadn't, you know, the examples, like you gave a ton of examples in your book, you gave a ton of examples, you know, in the magazine, you know, to give us that clarity, okay, and make it click, you know, on all
Mm-hmm.
cylinders, man. So, you know, that's brilliant, man. Histematics, man. I hope you able to get this thing spread it out everywhere, man. You know, where everybody is, you know, able to deal, you know, with history and math simultaneously. You know, you're learning about historical events, past events, heroes, and you're also learning about, you know, you're learning about math, right? You know what I'm saying, and how we use those things every day, you know, around us, man. And again, I appreciate you for being on the cover. I definitely, um, next issue, I definitely will, you know, want you to be a contributor in there. If you want to write in there, you know, that was the initial goal, was you to be a contributor in there, a writer in the magazine.
Yeah.
But I just feel like, with what you was doing, I've been watching what you was doing. So I was like, man, I think that was dope. I wanted to put you on the front of the cover, highlight you on the front of the cover, interview you so people can also read, read, what we discussed, in the interview, you know what I'm saying? And maybe go pick up the book, maybe go check out the YouTube, check out the YouTube channels and even check out the plethora of interviews you've been doing lately because you've been on the
Yeah.
run. You've been on
Yeah.
these interviews, man. So definitely,
Yeah.
man, definitely appreciate you, man. Bro, where I want to go, man. Let's talk about, man, your work emphasize empowering African American communities through mathematics. How do you see your role as a culture, as culturally relevant to the math education, and what strategies do you employ to make math more accessible and engaging? Well, we don't. Matter of fact, man, I don't even want to talk about because we kind of already talked about that question. We kind of already deal with that, you know what I'm saying? Because we kind of talked about that with the Histematics. We already
Yeah.
kind of talked
Yeah.
about it through the book. So, well, and we got like 15 more minutes, man. Let's talk about you appeared on various podcasts discussing mathematics education. What objectives do you aim to achieve through these platforms, and what impact do you hope to have on your audience as well as the podcast audience, man, you've been on? What kind of impact, and what's your full intent?
So my goal is really to normalize mathematics. When we think about like our scholars, like our warrior scholars, like we were talking about earlier, um, a lot of our scholars, like they left us a lot of information, a lot of guidance on our history, political science, psychology, so what I'm trying to do is like play my part and bring mathematics up to that level. Like we know we can go to the scholars, the African centered scholars, for the African history, for the African American history, the Caribbean history, and so forth. We know we can, Francis Cress Welsing, Dr. Bobby Wright, Naeem Akbar, Kobe Cambone, different people like that for the psychology, and but math, I want to kind of create a space where it's like, all right, we can go, because what I often kind of think about is like how and I would go to, like, when I would go to different conferences, right? When I would go to different conferences and I would listen to the different brothers and sisters like talking about the history and whatnot, and I would be really excited, and I might be in there taking notes and whatnot, and I'd be like, man, like, but if we want to learn math, we still gotta go to the white man for the math, though. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I want us to be able to just and not to say that there aren't black math teachers. There are black math teachers and black mathematicians, but I wanted to be as popular as the work of Amos Wilson is, at least within the community of people that embrace that type of work, as popular of the teachings and the lectures and the books written by Dr. John Henrik Clark, the old lectures by from Kwame Ture, you know what I'm saying? Like I want the math to be on par with that, right? So I'm just trying to bring math to the mainstream for us, because it's really not in the mainstream for us. It hasn't been marketed to us ever, I would say ever, in a way, at least in this country, in a way that would imply that we would embrace it fully, right? A lot of things have been marketed to us, designer brand clothes have been marketed to us, cars have been marketed to us, food has been marketed to us, chicken sandwiches have been marketed to us, like a lot of stuff has been marketed to us, but algebra and calculus have never been marketed to us. Like come on, come do this. Like the white folks, they not trying to get us to come do that, right? So but we got to do it, though. We got to do it, and by me talking about it a lot, on different platforms, and being around and just, talking to different people, really anybody that'll listen, hopefully it's like you said, like, it makes me, I appreciate hearing when you say that, like, our conversation before made you look at math differently. And then when people read the article, it made them look at math differently. Cause I think that's really what it is. Like, the way math has been presented to us, it makes you look at it a certain way where it's like, I'm not fucking with that, man. Like, I'm cool. Like, you know what I mean? The way it's been presented to us, right? But once you, I mean, it's almost like how Africa has been presented to a lot of us in school, in traditional schools, right? It will make you not want to associate yourself with Africa.
Right.
It would make you not want to. But then once you read the books by our scholars, like, oh, hold up, like you mentioned John G. Jackson, or you might read Chancellor Williams or something like that. Like, it's like, oh, hold up, nah. Oh, this is what Africa really was like? Oh, okay. I see. All right. So now I look at it differently now, right? This is what I'm trying to do for math. I'm trying to get our people to look at it differently, because it's, as a person that has, went through school and had a lot of success in math classes for the most part, and then having taught math for 20 years, I can say that it's not as difficult as we think once we open up our mind to accepting it, right? Accepting that we can do it, right? It's like, it's something else. Kwame Ture, it was a Kwame Ture lecture I was watching recently, and he was talking about how power is like access at the moment of conception, not the moment of implementation, right? So when he gives this example of, like, the math student in the math class, if they go into the math class believing that math is hard, then math is going to be hard and they probably won't do well. But if they go into the math class believing that math is easy, or at least manageable, and they go into it with the belief that, my ancestors created math, like, so of course I should be good at math. Just like a lot of people are trash at basketball, but they believe they're supposed to be able to play basketball because they're black. They think black people play basketball, so they just still going to try to play. Just like they think black people rap, so I'm still going to try to rap. I'm going to still do these, still try to put out this mixtape no matter what, right? You might be trash, but a lot of people believe that this is what we do, right? So you still have that confidence. A lot of us, we don't have the confidence. So when we run into some difficulty in mathematics, we automatically give up, and we sit back and we say, look, see, I told you, it's not for us. But I also say that there are a lot of things that we still do that are much more difficult than math, but we still do them because we believe that we're supposed to do them. Mm-hmm. Right. So it really is just an issue of how we look at math. Because if you start to look at math like something like, wait, now I'm supposed to be doing this, then when it becomes difficult, you'll still persevere, or you'll try to find some other resources to help you out. Whereas a lot of people, what they do, they don't believe math is for them because that's the programming. We all get subjected to that programming, right? Whether it's through the media, TV shows, movies, songs, our favorite rapper, talking about, how math wasn't important, or it was irrelevant, or they never understood it. You know what I'm saying? But no matter what it is, we end up buying into this idea that, the math wasn't for us. So once you start looking at it differently, like, no, this is supposed to be for me. And then you start seeing black people, not just myself, but it's, other math teachers, black math teachers I know, colleagues and people that I run with, from all over the country, that are also concerned with, like, promoting math, right? We just out here just really promoting math to our people. When you see them, then it's like, oh, you start to take a step back and say, oh, wait a minute, okay, math maybe is for me. And that's the thing that we really got to do. So really also in connection with that, I hope that I inspire, parents to become more proactive with learning the math that they may have never learned before, so that they can help their children, because that's the best thing they can do. One of the best things they can do for their children is to give their children a strong foundation in math and algebra and arithmetic, and then the geometry and everything else that comes after that. Because one of the things too I'm noticing is that there's a lot of emphasis on exposing black children towards STEM careers, which is great, right? Line up as many black engineers, computer scientists, doctors, nurses, architects, software engineers, whatever, as many as you can get. But if you put them in front of black children that fear math and that are, think math is irrelevant, them seeing them people for many of those children, maybe not all, for many of those children, it's not going to matter. And what I'm noticing is that I'm seeing a lot of people that are well-meaning, that are just that are putting a lot of energy in just exposing Black children to Black professionals that are in those fields without doing the work of showing them how to do math. If you show them how to do math, it's like shit. If you show them how to do math, you might not need to even show them no Black engineers, because they might be like, look, I'm Black, I'm very good at math, I'm about to go do this. This seems interesting, right? Now, it'd be great to get exposure, right? To see that representation. That's always a good thing, I think, right? But I think the key really is give our children a solid foundation in math. We need Black mathematicians. We need Black mathematicians. We need Black engineers, and we need people that are nation builders, like for our nation, because you always building somebody's nation. If you building this nation, or you building you build ours, you can build this nation or build somebody else's. That's a decision every person got to make, whose nation you try to build, right? Especially when you get into the STEM disciplines, right? Because you could be, a mathematician, but you end up working for, Department of Defense, designing bombs that's going to that's going to be used on African nations and whatnot. That could be the outcome, right? But that's where the politics comes into play. That's why you need the Histematics, so you can say, oh, well, you know what? Maybe if I learn about these radical brothers and sisters from back in the day, maybe I'll reconsider who I'm going to use my math ability for and what I'm going to use it for. As opposed to just saying, well, what I'm saying, I'm good at math. I just want a job. And it's a difficult decision, because some people like, like, hey, I need a job, and maybe this is all that's available right now. You know what I'm saying? So, but at least you'll consider, that you have options. Right. You know what I mean? So yeah, so me just talking a lot about math is meant to like normalize it, bring it to the mainstream, and then hopefully, we'll have less people that will be so proud, so proud to say that they were never that good at math. And a lot of those people that say they were never that good at math, I think they didn't give themselves a chance. They didn't give themselves a chance. They could have been great at it, but they gave up. Because like I said, I think they didn't believe that it was for them. So they just said, think about me, people like, keep playing that sport. You keep playing that sport, and then you get better because you kept playing, because you thought it was for you. You think about that thing you kept doing because you thought you were supposed to be doing it, and then you ended up good at it. But what if you had quit that too? Then you would have never got good at it. A lot of us treat math like that. We think we're not supposed to do it. We think we're not supposed to do it, so we give up prematurely. And then inevitably we never become good at it.
Yeah, I'm one of
them. So it's propaganda. It's all about the propaganda. So that's why, to your question, like, I'm out here like pushing a different propaganda to let people feel like, nah, like math is for you. And even to the adults and the parents and the grandparents, it's like, yo, it's never too late. We're lifelong learners. We're lifelong learners. But like in ancient African society, you wasn't even an adult till you was 40, right? So think about, if you like I'll be 45 in May. Like I'm barely, according to those standards, I'm barely a grown man. So it's another way to look at things, So even if you're an older person, you can still learn. And also, real quick to that point, I think a lot of people have this what is it called? The psychologists, they call it object permanence. It's either object permanence or maybe it's arrested development. But where somebody could be 45 years old, and then when they think of math, if they had a negative experience in math in middle school, right? Let's say 7th grade, right? When they was 12 years old. When they think of math today at 45, they think about that experience in 7th grade when they were 12. So then if somebody proposes to them, you should study math, you should practice and try to learn it once and for all. They're like, nah, I'm cool on that. I don't want to do that, because they're thinking that it's going to be the same experience, not realizing that when they were 12, their brain wasn't even fully developed. And inevitably the math is going to be easier to manage now at 45 because they've lived life. They have more life experience now. So now those concepts are going to make even more sense more rapidly, because now they've lived. They've had husbands, wives, girlfriends, boyfriends. They've worked full-time jobs, part-time jobs. They've traveled, took plane flights, and took trains and did this and that. Maybe went to jail, came home, did all this type of stuff. You know what I'm saying? Worked here, worked there, all different types of stuff. That and again, math is a science that models the universe. So the more life experience you have, the easier it's going to be easier it'll be to understand the mathematics. So I want anybody listening that feels that way, that's like, nah, because I remember math was hard and I had a negative experience. Like, I promise you, it's not going to be the same. As a 40-year-old, or 30-year-old, or 50-year-old, it's not going to be the same. You're going to catch on easy, but you got to have good teaching. You do got to have good teaching, right? But check my YouTube channel out. So check my YouTube channel out. If you're not going to actually take a class, check my YouTube channel out. See if it makes sense.
No doubt, man.
But yeah,
keep man, the way that you going is gonna get there, because you kind of made me feel bad because I can't pop off, a bunch of mathematicians like like I do, some of my other warrior scholars that I look at, that was educators, that was, that study other fields of science, who are historians. I can pop them off all day, but mathematicians, I can't really give you a lot of them, man. So, and then you mentioned a word like, I'm a part of Team RBG, and we have something that we finna do. It's called proper propaganda. So we finna Black State of Emergencies. So we finna push the Black State of Emergency out in every niche, in music, education, agriculture, and politics, and economics, and news, podcasting, to push that proper propaganda, you know what I'm saying? And go on these runs, and every niche that we can hit, we're going to hit those different niches, you know what I'm saying? And push the proper propaganda. You just mentioned that while ago with the proper propaganda, you know what I'm saying? We have that propaganda of math is, we ain't gonna use math when we get older anyway. You know what I'm saying? Math is not for Black folks. Just all the things that we heard coming up, math is just too hard. Long as I just know how to count money.
Right. Yeah, all that.
Count money, I'm good. I ain't studying we ain't gonna use no fractions and all this other stuff. We're not gonna use that stuff in the real world, man. You're not gonna use that in the real world. So we've been hearing that propaganda for so long, man. And
so long.
Even in the sense that, like you saying, it's not even been marketed. Like you mentioned, it hadn't even been marketed toward us. Every other thing has been marketed toward Black folks, but that. So I just, I hope that you continue to stay on task, you know what I'm saying, and continue to push this proper propaganda when it comes to math, and get more people involved in math and just change their perspective. Because I know once they get your book, or they go to your YouTube channel, or they look at the magazine, the magazine article, you know what I'm saying, it's going to change. I guarantee it's going to change their perspective in a way, because like I said, a few people that I know that read it, you know what I'm saying, they hit me up and they talked about, they liked it the way you broke down math, or the way that you talk about math, or the examples that you gave math, or I didn't think about that, that, hey, I do use math in a way. I know one old boy was talking about how you used one of the examples of meeting halfway. You may be we may have a problem, and then we may come together to try to resolve the problems, and we talk it out. You may be at 90%, you may be at 30%, that's math right there. He was talking,
right.
Just a few examples that you gave, you gave. So
settling our differences.
Yes.
Settling our differences, right? Which means to eliminate the difference, right? To eliminate the difference. So our difference is zero.
Right.
We're on the same page now.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, boy was talking about that. I was like, yeah, he caught my attention with that. And then
yeah. Or like to if I could add something else, whenever somebody says, what difference do it make? Like asking that question, what difference do it make, is an implication embedded within that there is no difference. And the difference is the result when you do subtraction. So if it's no difference, that means it's the same number. Like 80 minus 80 is 0, right? So if you got to travel, like if you got to go 80 miles going this route, but then somebody else like, nah, we should go this way, but it's still 80 miles going the other way, then somebody be like, what difference do it make? Because it's a difference of 0 between the two routes. We still go 80 miles. Right. So the math is all around us, and it's like hidden in plain sight. That's what it is. The math a lot of times is also hidden in plain sight, because it's like it's in a lot of popular culture or language, like you know, the different lingo, the different like when we talk about like square business, like it's square business. Like a square has 4 equal sides. Like when it's square business, that's good business. You know what I'm saying? Nobody's getting over on nobody. We you know what I'm saying? We straight. Nobody's scamming. I'm not scamming you. You're not scamming me. We cool. Like, cause that's why it's square business, because square has 4 equal sides.
That's
right. So everything's equal. So we all square business.
That's right. That's right. My brother was talking about the square business part. You know what I'm saying? He uses that like, man, yeah, that's square business. Matter of fact, Chavis, who's on here, I don't know if I hadn't talked to Chavis a whole lot lately, but he's a part of my research group, Kofi Piesie research team. And I'm also a part of his group, Tep Hesed Warriors Correct Method. And Chavis likes to use that a lot. That's square business. That's square business.
Right. That's a miniature geometry lesson. Every time he say that, let him know, like, that's a miniature geometry lesson.
Yeah.
Because what makes it square? Because all you gotta do is like talk to a child, like say, listen, just let them know, like introduce them to the geometry. So then boom, like I said earlier, they're gonna learn about squares and geometry and the how to find the formula to find the area of a square, perimeter of a square, and all that for the second time when they see it in school. When they see it in school, it's gonna be for the second or third time. They're gonna see it for the first time when they're having that conversation with him, right? Because it's like, what makes it square business? Oh, well, we both equal, right? What you know about a square? Squares have 4 equal sides. Yeah. A square is a type of rectangle that's got 4 equal sides. It's got four 90-degree angles. It's a quadrilateral.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? The diagonals are also congruent. It forms 2 right triangles. You know what I mean? The list goes on and on, but it all starts with that comment, square business. And then from there, you just go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
You know? And that's something easy to do, like just in general conversation. Like my whole point is, like, and also like we talked about this earlier, like even going back to the book, it's like we don't gotta wait for our children to go to school to learn anything, really. We don't gotta wait. Like we gotta get to the point, we gotta do the work. It's gonna take work. It's not gonna be easy, it's gonna take work, but we gotta do the work to get to the point where school is a space for practice. So as long as we're doing the work to like developing our communities, our neighborhoods, our houses, you know, whatever, to administer that education primarily, you know, as long as that's the goal, we're gonna get there. You know, we're gonna get there.
No doubt, man. Can you give the people your handles, man, where they can find you on social media, how they can contact you if they in the local area or even the area if they want their children tutored? You know, how can they reach you?
Yeah, so tutoring is all virtual. So wherever you at, you know, just hit us up. But go to allthismath.com and there's a brief contact form if you're interested in tutoring. On allthismath.com, there's a contact form. Just click on the contact form and then just type in, you know, a small amount of information, you know, like your email address, telephone number, if you want me to call you, and just state, you know, what grade, subject, or whatnot you're interested in for tutoring. The social media handles are All This Math. So All This Math on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. Yeah. And also definitely subscribe to the YouTube. If you haven't already, definitely subscribe to the YouTube. The YouTube is All This Math, and really like push the YouTube, like, you know, push the YouTube. Let everybody know about it. Let everybody know it exists. Let everybody know it's out there. Like it's a YouTube channel like no other. If you want, you know, simplified math lessons and Black history lessons at the same time. You know, now every video doesn't have the Black history lesson in it, but the majority of them do. Majority of them do have Black History lessons. Some of the videos I just ran through the content real quick.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely standard deviation. Yeah, standard deviation I am, but you know what? Standard deviation is a concept that I'm not as well versed in it as I would like to be. I know the definition of it, but I can't really explain it to a 5-year-old. Like I got a 5-year-old son. I can't yet explain it to my 5-year-old son yet. You know, so I don't. That's a concept that I really want to study more. You know, standard deviation or standard error. You know, how far off we are from the mean. You know, of a set of data. You know, but the standard part like throws me off sometimes. I got to study that more. You know, that's kind of plagued me for a while. Like it's like one of them things. Like it's like you know what it is, but I don't really know it, and I like to really know it. Like I know it, but I don't really know it. You know, so yeah, so that's how I am with standard deviation. You know what I'm saying?
Mike Chambers, peace. Mike Chambers, that's the brother Akil, the H Rap Brown song that we listened to in the beginning.
Okay.
You know, you mentioned him, you know, in the interview, and you actually mentioned him twice in the interview. So I was like, man, let me hit my brother up, man, and see if I can get that song and play that song in the beginning and see if he pay attention, you know, to what you saying in the saying in the music. He sung it right away, man. But he said, I realized later it was called homework. You really do the work at home. You know, you mentioned that several times. You know, you start at home, it starts in the house, and then you know you go to school just for the practice, man.
Yeah, and we got to really reorient ourselves toward that because you know I didn't when I coming up I wasn't brought up like that. You know,
either.
But yeah, we gotta kind of do. I guess one of the last things I say is this: like, think about it like in terms of how if we were fortunate, a lot of our parents provided us with African American history and African history before we even went to school, or they did that because they knew the school was not going to provide it. So they just took it upon themselves to provide that. So it shouldn't be really much of a stretch if you're familiar with that experience, right? Or if you're a parent doing that for your children now, right? So what I'm saying is, let's extend that to mathematics. And actually, we only got to stop at math. We can extend that to all the subjects. We can do that with chemistry, physics, English literature, you know, geography, foreign languages. We the sky's the limit. We can keep going. You know, but definitely with mathematics, you know, so it's like preparing our children, you know, for mathematics, you know, before they even get to school.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, man, y'all give it up one time for our brother Akil Parker. I definitely, man, appreciate you coming on, man, and you know, breaking history. What is history? What is it? Histematics. Say, because I want to say it correctly. What is
Histematics? Histematics.
Yes,
histematics.
Right. Yeah. You know, histematics, man. You know, I see what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. I appreciate you. You know, for being featured on the magazine, man, and you know, hopefully you'll come back and be a contributor inside the next edition in about another month and a half or so when we put out the next edition, man. And you know, Kofi Piesie TV, man, is your home, man. Anytime you want to come on, man, and talk about anything or promote anything or you need anything, man, from me, man, just you know, just hit me up in the DMs or you know, you got my phone number, man. You can call me at any time, man. And again, man, we'll appreciate you, bro, for coming on, man. I appreciate those who tuned in and watched. I appreciate those who stayed the duration of the time. I appreciate those popped in for a minute, popped out. I appreciate those who's going to check this out later on in the archives. Again, if you hadn't subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. If you hadn't subscribed to All This Mad channel, please go and subscribe to the brother channel. Go follow him on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook as well. Go check out some of just Google him. All This Math, all types of stuff will pop up for him. He's been all over the social media world, all over the podcasting world right now. You know, he's on the run trying to continue to push the proper propaganda when it comes to mathematics, man. And on that, man, we out. I'll leave y'all again with my brother Mike Chambers on H-Rap Brown, man, and we'll see y'all when we see y'all. Well, we'll see y'all back here next week. I'll be back with Obafemi Saturday. I'll be back the following day after Sunday with Stigalo, both times at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. So y'all definitely be on the lookout for those two interviews as well, man. But we out of here, man. We, like I said, man, we'll see y'all, and we'll see y'all, man. Peace and power.
Cool cat, black shades, afro crown. Calm and collected, speaking that profound. Thank God, front line and one back down. Pause that poetic, H-Rap Brown. Cool cat, black shades, afro crown. Calm and collected, speaking that profound. Thank God, front line and one back down. Pause that poetic, H-Rap Brown. Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, known as SNCC, formulated in the 60s. The height of civil rights erupt in the city streets. No justice, just fighting for the liberty. Arrested for riots, but not before you heard the cry. Violence is American as cherry pie. Serving as minister of justice before the Panther Partnership end in abruptness. Organizing against racial attacks. Armed self-defense for a nation of blacks. With presidents he sat. Enforced potent gas. Organized registered voting acts. The young and passionate often will become activists, killed by guns and savages, far from pacifists, clashing with racist nationalists, government run by capitalists. Cool cat, black shades, afro crown, calm and collected, seeking that profound. Thank God, front line and one back down. Pause that poetic, H-Rap Brown. Cool cat, black shades, afro crown, calm and collected, seeking that profound. Thank God, front line and one back down. Pause that poetic, H-Rap Brown. Wanted and taunted by the FBI. Brown shot by a deputy and left to die. No answer needed, no question why. Just to survive, decided it was best he hide. OT, lay low obviously. Regroup and retroop possibly. A year later, shootout with NYPD. Arrested, convicted, attempted robbery. Upstate in Attica for 5 years. Guess the time helped get his mind clear. Reset the revolutionary pioneer. Came home strong with refined ideas. Converted to Islam on his deen. H. Brown, not Imam Jamil Al-Amin. Moved to Atlanta, new on the scene. Opened the grocery store, got the community clean. Cool cat, black shades, afro crown. Calm and collected, speaking that profound. Thank God, front line and one back down. Pause that poetic, H-Rap Brown. Cool cat, black shades, afro crown. Calm and collected, speaking that profound. Thank God, front line and one back down. Pause that poetic.